Today we'll be going to discuss a more of an open-ended discussion where we wanted to, given we are appointed as head of MLOps, and we see that some of the concerns that are available as part of the current pipelines that particular organization has deployed. They have some issues with non-standard model versioning, like and inconsistent monitoring. Not all the models are monitored in a way. What are the inputs, outputs, or distributional checks, etc. And again, there might be some issues like some teams have their own way of managing the models, or models that are not available for everyone to use. And there is trainings and serving skew where data is mostly the the mismatch in distributions of the data as well as whatever they see in production, which might result in issues, in incorrect predictions or outcomes. And there are complaints ups in a way like they might not be following all the required documentation for a model, so that it is like fine by the legality of the usage of the model in that domain. So these are the issues that we are seeing in this particular organization: non-standard model versioning, inconsistent monitoring. And this discussion is around what are the things we need to prioritize so that we can fix this particular pipelines or organizational structure. Okay, and I'll start with mine. I believe, again, I'll start with mine. I believe it would be better if we start with standardizing the models in a way. Like we wanted to have a model repository where everyone is aware of what are the inputs, the outputs of the model, what the data has gone through for the creation of that model, so that at least we have observability and experimental. We can recreate the experiment if needed. And but if I see otherwise, I also see on business side, right? Like the business side, there might be the main gap is training and serving skew. I might have a better infra on the back end. If my on business side, if I'm not predicting well, it is of no use. So I might prioritize training, serving skew, and making sure that I streamline the process in meantime. And I believe that might be a great idea, given that like it is not affecting any business objective on the longer run. And we are also making sure that we are streamlining the process. So what are your thoughts on that? Like, again, yeah, we can start the discussion there.
Hey, can I just give some more context to this use case as well?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So I think the reason we find that a discussion like this could be useful for all of you is that this is actually going to be how you'll start facing problems once you get into the field, right? Obviously, what you're learning is theory now. You're learning a bit of practicals with Google Cloud, but in most cases, you're going to be given or you'll be part of an environment which has a complex set of issues. Nobody's going to come in and tell you, hey, let's use MLflow, right? Or nobody's going to come in and say versioning is the problem, right? In most cases, you don't even know that these are issues. You will only be told that, hey, you're part of an MLOps team. And based on your years of experience, you could either be the head of MLOps or you could be a MLOps engineer, a senior engineer, an architect. But you might not have the full visibility into the problem statement. So that's even, before a discussion like this comes up. Again, what we have tried to do here is simplify that a bit so that, the problem discovery is done for you. So in an organization like this, there are usually very senior level audits that happen, and the audits reveal these kinds of issues. So let's assume that those problems have been discovered for you and they've been laid out in the table like this. So what you'll never get a chance to do is fix all of them, right? That's also a given. In most real world scenarios, the budget is finite, the constraints are many, the teams that you have to interact with are many. You are only part of a bigger machine. So to get the other parts of the machine to work along with your sense of what is a good or best practice is not going to be easy. So that's why you've got to think about how you prioritize, right? What do you prioritize? How do you prioritize? Who do you want to make as your good friends as you roll out some changes in the organization, etc., etc. So those are real world constrained problem solving that you'll have to do. Now, the reason why we think this discussion is useful is not just to prepare you for the real world, but also to prepare you for the end term. Some of the questions in the end term are going to be very similar to this. So, uh, what we want to emphasize on, at least in this discussion today, is that there is no single easy right answer. You're going to get a lot of options, and we want to discuss the options. That's why it's a discussion today. But in the end term, we're going to provide more constraints that make the answer direct and objective. But at least for now, for today's discussion, let's keep it as a subjective discussion, which means that there might be multiple things that could be done to change the negatives that are there in the company. So, what would you do? Like Sai says, he will prioritize business divisioning, which is, of course, a very important part of the problem. But you could choose to do other things as well. So, we can open it up and discuss it. Like, and just raise your hands, and then we will go through one by one.
Yeah, yeah, Zad.
Yeah. So, assuming that this is a commercial model, and I'm just making an assumption and on the basis of that going. If it's a commercial model, if the user is paying on a per prompt or per whatever basis, and if the specifically the training serving skew, if perhaps that has come to our attention because the user has come back and saying, look, 50% of my prompts are coming with either suboptimal results or actively unusable results, then that automatically becomes priority one of like get a model that functions to an adequate standard in deployment. Then once that's done and that's bought us a bit of breathing space, then just personally I would probably choose to tackle perhaps together no standardized model versioning and compliance gaps of just sort of that would base those would part of it. No standardized model versioning would largely be ML flow or ML flow like stuff implementing. So part of it is developing like the model development infrastructure. The other part would probably be like coming up with procedures of with regards to compliance gaps of just okay, this time we had to rush out a model to deployment. Now going forward, here's the requisite documentation that you generate, be systematic about it. If a result of having to generate documentation and go through ML flow is that each iteration of model development takes a day or day and a half longer, we're fine with that. But going forward, we do it in this manner. Those would be, I'm just going by my gut, so I can't back up why I would prioritize this than that, but that would be how I would go about it.
No, fair enough. I think especially if there is a commercial angle attached to it, I think it takes absolute importance. In the other angle, which I just thought about when you were talking about it, is that even if it's not an externally visible commercial angle, in most companies, the cost of an infrastructure like this is usually shared, which means that the ML production team or the infrastructure team that's responsible for model serving would have, you know, split up the costs for different business teams to execute on top. So at the minimum, within the company, there was likely to be a commercial structure attached to it. Like it's as though the business team is saying, look, I paid $1 million for getting an ML platform from you guys, the IT team or the data science team. And if that's not even delivering as per what you were promising, then I'm going to pull the plug on further funding for this platform. And I'm going to use my own tool or my own, you know, platform choice in order to get my work done for the next year. Because ultimately, the budget for that uh, business is going to come directly from that business's operations, and therefore that's very critical for the shared platform to have access to. So I guess I'm making the same point that you're making, Yazad, that the commercial angle could be both external or internal, and it's still going to be one of the most crucial aspects to serve first.
Yeah, Smita, go ahead.
Yeah, so if we talk about the order, I think from my perspective, of course, training, serving, SKU should be addressed first, and the second is shadow IT models, as both of them are impacting business, and once the business is happy, then we are justifying the investment they are doing in the team, and then we can prioritize the other things. For example, compliance gaps, I think it is for upcoming regulations, but we should be prepared for that, as it can affect. So third can be that, and for fourth and fifth, I can take any one of the first two and the last, like that. This is what I think about this.
So let me just play devil's advocate and throw a question out there, Smita, for you.
Yeah, yeah.
So uh, yeah, I get the point about training, serving, SKU. That's fine because that's going to be clearly a problem. But why would shadow IT models be priority number two? And the reason I'm asking that is, if the shadow IT models are working fine, which they seem to be working fine because it's actually driving actual business decisions, and those models are, varying based on the level of comfort the respective business analysts have on their tooling of choice, like Excel and personal laptop-driven Python scripts, etc. Uh, why touch that right now, given that there are other bigger problems like compliance, etc. Only because it's working, right? Those shadow IT models are working. Of course, they need to be fixed. There's no doubt. But why would that be priority number two compared to, let's say, uh, not having standardized model versioning or compliance?
I took it, sir, because the sentence says that, see, it is affecting business decisions. Now, I have seen this personally, that when our models are giving even a small discrepancy, and based on that, if a slighter wrong decision has been taken, in that case, the complete responsibility comes on a business analyst or a data analyst or the data team. So that's why I thought of addressing that first. For compliance gaps, I read the sentence that it is for upcoming AI regulations. So it is not as of now. About standardizing model versioning, of course, that is a problem, but it is not affecting the result directly, because it is not saying that because of that the model is giving wrong signals for making wrong decisions, or the predictions are getting wrong. This is what I took into account. So.
Okay, interesting. Can I understand how did you, uh, you know, understand that the decisions were wrong? Because I don't think those words were used in the use case. I think the optimization criteria. Sai,
Mm-hmm.
if you go to the next slide,
Mm-hmm. Okay, just a
it's
minute.
about bringing order to chaos. I mean, okay. You can interpret multiple layers of meanings to it, but I think the part about wrong decisions may not have been a problem.
Okay. Yes, but I interpreted it in a way that maybe that can in the future. Okay, for now it has not signaled any wrong decision, but
Yeah,
maybe in the near future, if it drives a wrong business decision, that will be a problem, sir.
I understand. Of course. Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's why I thought of addressing it first.
Sure, sure. I understand. In fact, I think the context also matters here. So yeah, definitely, Smita, that's a valid answer. The context here, again, what you will likely see in the real world once you step into applying these skills in the job market, is that most. I think I'm just making a general point, Smita, not just to your point, but I'm just making a general point, which is that in most cases you'll see that people are, of course, very comfortable with what they know. I mean, that's given, right? Everybody is
Correct.
is comfortable with the tools that they've been trained in, and as a result, you will have shadow IT in general, not even just shadow IT models. You'll have shadow IT, which means that people have their own devices, or sometimes they have their own tech stack, which is not officially licensed or sanctioned um, by the central IT team in an organization. So controlling for that is a big issue across the board, not just for data science teams. But for models specifically, you've got to really understand where does the model selection come from, or where does the tool selection come from. In most cases, it comes from the perception that IT is too slow, or shared services teams are too slow. So then the
Correct.
business team says, okay, look, I'm going to do my own thing because I can't wait for that common team sitting in some headquarters to get their act together and help me out. I might as well just deploy what I know very well and get the work done. So that mentality is very common amongst business teams, especially because they are the ones driving the money. Like the guys
Correct.
who are
Correct.
running the sales team, or the marketing executive who's driving initiatives around generating more leads. Like she might decide this, etc. So I think we need to just be cognizant of that. Like the moment you say, "Look, I'm going to make a change to that," they will really be upset. Like because they will start pointing
Yes.
fingers at 10
Right.
other things which are wrong,
Mm-hmm.
and they'll say that, "Why don't you fix that first, and then come and try to fix something that is already working for me." So
Correct. Correct.
that's going to be a common pushback. But yes, I think in the 12-month roadmap, this has to be something that needs to be fixed for sure.
Correct, sir.
I think,
Ram.
sorry, oh, if there's a queue.
Oh, yeah, yeah, go on. Go ahead, Noel.
Okay. So yeah, so what I have generally seen in my organization, my earlier organization, is that the biggest problem that you face from a business perspective, I'm talking top down now, is that unless you put some processes in place, there is no single source of truth. And if there's no single source of truth, it always creates issues between teams. Like, for example, a business team will say they're doing exceptionally well. The finance team will come and say that, your numbers are not matching. Or the delivery team will come and say that, the margins that you're talking about does not exist, and so on. And everyone has their own models, everyone has their own data sets, which they come up with for the analysis in the review meetings, and it becomes very, very complicated there. So the first thing that normally we do from a business perspective is figure out if there's a single source of truth and how to enforce that. And I've also seen this happen, or rather, we have implemented this even in, let's say, two or three data-based products, ML products that we had. So to understand how the data is drifting and if there's any issue in the incoming data versus any changes in the business rules that were driving the model or the analysis, to figure that out was a complex task for us. And we had to do this continuously, like week on week, to figure out if everything is working or not. Once we figured out that yes, there is a drift or there is a problem, then we started working backwards to figure out what are the places in which the issues are, and why is the drift happening in spite of us putting certain processes in place. That's where we started discovering the shadow IT models. That's where we started discovering the gaps in the processes, and then we started working backwards to fix that. So yeah, but the first priority always was to make sure that business keeps on running. The second priority is to touch the low-hanging fruits if they're there. And the third priority was to have a long-term plan in place and then start putting everything around that. So yeah, there's a problem between let's say 6 to 12 months that's going to happen. But if you are very clear what's your end goal at the end of the 12 months, the priorities will then start moving based on the way the business is shaping up and the issues that are coming up.
Makes sense. Yeah, I think the problem around single source of truth is a huge issue, and it should not be trivialized at all. Um, Certainly.
I don't know if I'm putting Anupam's words in a different way, but I feel compliance gaps are the first one to address. Because as from this use case, they have written that many models already lack required documentation. And if you go on and fix the models, whether it is related to their versions or their monitoring, etc., they also ultimately should be going into the documentation, right? So what changes we have done and how we have improvised the model's performance. So if we do not fix this gap at first and we keep on doing changes, we only drift far, not towards closing the gap anymore. That's how I understood.
Usually, I would go with the monitoring first to figure out that what I'm seeing is consistent across areas. If that is not consistent, then I start attacking the IT models and the model versioning. And to understand the model versioning and IT models, I'll come to training serving skew and compliance gaps. Now, once I've figured out where exactly the major issue is, then I will start reordering my priorities. So I would not say that there is a fixed way of looking at it. There will be an iteration that keeps on happening depending on what I keep on uncovering. But monitoring then would become the most critical aspect, because without a view of what is happening, I cannot take any decisions.
So in some senses, you're saying that being able to do better problem discovery is going to be also one of the key things to do.
Yeah, I mean, otherwise I'm blind. I mean, what is the basis of my decision making?
Yeah.
The audit is just pointing out certain things in one period of time. But on a day-to-day basis, what is happening, even if I'm making any changes, are they reflecting properly, or are they making the system better? All of that will be through monitoring only. So monitoring needs to be fixed first to at least make sure that everyone is speaking the same language. And then the gaps will start automatically bubbling up. Like, so if I'm saying monitoring is okay, then why is one person saying 30%, other person saying 25%? Why is one person saying this and another person saying that? And then, yeah, I mean, you can call it a whack-a-mole kind of a thing, but if you do it properly, this is a very good way of fixing things top down when you have a business as usual running and you want to make sure that it does not get impacted or with minimum impact.
In fact, that's a great point you make, even for another reason. Again, something that just strikes me now. In most cases, the audit team that works on auditing does not really have the wherewithal to judge like complex tech like this. So what ends up happening is they flag what they know from prior experience of having done something similar, but they don't really know the impact that it's actually going to have for a particular organization. So one approach is to just treat the audit as sacrosanct and go about trying to fix the audit observations directly, which is what most organizations that pay lip service to these kinds of initiatives do. But like you rightly said, you are in a position of better skill, right, than an external audit team or even an internal audit team which doesn't know about ML. And to do, what's right requires you to understand what the problem is from your perspective, not necessarily from an auditor's perspective. And therefore, it's better to actually think about problem discovery afresh and solve for that, and then work backwards from there to see what is the best approach. Yeah, I think that's a great approach, especially for somebody who heads the team.
Just to add in inconsistent monitoring, uh, what does monitoring mean? I get it. Suppose we have two models. One is running on Kubernetes, a 100 node cluster that receives a 1 million requests per second, and the other one is 1 million, 10 requests per second. So the other one might not require monitoring as such because the load is minimal, but the other one, monitoring is needed in a specialized way for that.
Vipper, your voice is cracking.
Uh, is it better now?
Yeah, you.
So we have suppose two models running, one that receives 1 million requests per second and the other one is 10 requests per second. So the monitoring as in the loads of the nodes in the Kubernetes cluster would matter in the high end model, but on the uh, but on the smaller insignificant model it wouldn't matter so much. So the requirements of the monitoring itself would differ in the two models.
No requirement, but I think given if we are building for on an organization level, the monitoring systems, they will have consistent metrics that are already kind of like we might have validated them, right? Like the availability or the more of the time, like tracing, where is the request coming from, what is the data coming in, all these situations. So the the way you on the side monitoring you look at is like they might have different requirements or different priorities, but I think monitoring can be standardized to an extent that these are the KPIs we wanted to make sure that we deliver on, rather than going okay, this is less priority service or this is not a most priority service.
Okay.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Actually, so actually, I was thinking of the way how to solve this problem of all the problem it has. Like, I guess the answer is hidden in the that line you have shown in the next slide, which is like bring order to the chaos, right? And to bring order to the some any of the chaos, we need a and law and order. Like it's like a our justice system, right? We have to have a standardized structure and uh, consistent follow up of that structure if that's being followed or not. So I'm not going to rank all of this one by one, but first of all, I'm going to do what is standardize every possible our processes we have, and after that I will go about it from the bottom to the top, which means not in the list, means from the basic truth. First of all, our basic thing is like we are training model, right? So our model has to be first of all being standardized how we're going to train. Of course, based on the restrictions we have, the restriction like the budget restrictions, of course. Based on the budget restriction, we have to first decide what tools we might use because we have a lot of tools, and after that we will just go about from the bottom. First of all, about the model, right? So first we have to uh, find a way to model to version the model for every team. Like if any team is creating model or training model, they have to have a certain structure fixed to do that. As there is inconsistency between like people using git tags or timestamp folder, that has to be standard or structured and consistently being checked. After that, fixing that we have now, we have a model which is being properly being versioned. We are now aware of that our model can't be wrong right now. After that, we can go about a level up. So we can, let's say, take shadow IT model. So different teams uses different models as it's written, but we can also make some standard approach to it. Like if someone using Excel macros, then there have to be uh, a structured format to it, that you have to do it uh, in a formal way or like in a structured way, because bringing, as going back to the word, like bringing order to chaos, we have to have a standard approach for all of the processes or for all of the uh, teams we have. So after that we will come into the onto the topic of training skew, because now we know our model is being versioned properly, and every model, like it can be Python or Excel models, that is that have a structure to it. Now we will come to the training skew part. Now we know that our training environment is now have a structure and it's being properly checked time to time, then we will come to know if there is any problem in we can just replicate the training environment to the production environment, right? As we do in these days already. And then we can come to the inconsistent monitoring. So monitoring, as Anupam said, I guess he said we will go from monitoring then top to bottom, right? But I feel that monitoring, if we take this as a single factor, which is wrong into our use case, then it can be good. But monitoring is already inconsistent, that we can't be sure of the model we are monitoring is good or not. So like this monitoring can be wrong too, because we don't have our basic truth is good, which means the model we have, it's not being properly monitored. And after that, of course, if we standardize all of this stuff, then our compliance will be very good, right? Because we have transparency in the processes. We have a structured format, and we are checking every steps in a standard way. Then our compliance gaps is automatically going to be better for that.
Yeah, I think the point about you know focusing on what the task in hand is, which is bringing order to chaos, that's actually a point very well taken. I feel that at the end of the day, whoever is appointed you as the head of MLOps is expecting that as the first order of action, which means that if you provide a roadmap of how you want to bring structure, which is like you rightly said, bringing rules and regulations or the law of the land to the entire use of machine learning, I think that will be very well appreciated because that's what they want to hear first. I think the fact that they've appointed you as ML ops head means that they know that there is a problem. So the fact that there are problems is probably something that they've already learned to expect. What is probably not, in their control, or they don't feel that equipped to do, is how do you solve for it, right? Because they don't have that kind of skill set. That's why they've appointed you in the first place. So I think the fact that you focus on that as the main, thing to do initially, that's a point that's well taken. Um, you've got to start thinking about how do you go about solving and bringing that rule of law. And I think but while I think the points you make are valid, right, focusing on training skew, etc., there is a bigger message that I think is also being driven from a use case discussion like this, right, which is as skilled data science practitioners, the use of tools or best practices to solve a problem comes naturally to us because that's what we know and that's what we are good at. But if we are not able to put a structure around that, right? If you're not able to justify why am I doing something like this, then even with the best tool knowledge, we might not get the right outcome, right? That's probably the main message here. So the tool and the structure and all of that comes down to the rules of the land, the law of the land, the regulations that you want to put in play, etc. Right? So it's important that we actually focus on that. Is my main submission from this use case discussion. Everything else is technology, right? Which we can definitely do more and better, etc., because we are all technology gurus at the end of the day.
Yes, for sure. But also, I guess the point I was trying to make also is like we have to start, we have to filter out that the problem, like these 5 problems we have, and find that problem which is a base problem in the sense like from where it starts. Of course, it's the model first, right? Because all of we are doing is machine learning operations. So the models have to be first priority to rectify the problem in that. Then we can follow up the next steps we have in this problem. So problem points, I guess that's what I was like trying to say.
Sure.
Yeah, first we have to focus on the model, then we can go about it like how the training skew can be solved, and then shadow ID models, and then monitoring, and then compliance gaps. It's already it's like automatically going to be fixed if we fix all of those steps already. That's my point.
Okay, maybe I think given we pointed out that we wanted to prioritize monitoring, if we is that fine? Can we look into how do we want to establish the monitoring as part of this pipeline? And what are the components that needed and what are the teams that we might need to interact with so that we can integrate the monitoring in a better manner?
But I have one point, like uh, in the monitoring part, if we taking as a individual problem, then I think watching like looking for monitoring part first makes sense. But if the monitoring is of course we are doing for the models, right? If our model has some problem, like versioning has a problem, training it has a skew into it, so we can't be like sure of the monitoring also, right?
No, but
Because,
given if you have established monitoring, that the
Mhm.
training and serving screw will also be highlighted as part of that monitoring process, right?
But what about
Basically,
versioning?
basically, what's going to happen is once you start monitoring, either everything will look okay or you will start seeing issues. So let me take one business example. So when we were monitoring a machine learning product, okay, we started with business dashboards. So we started seeing if there's a skew or if there's a change in our revenue patterns, or if there any changes in the kind of quality that output that we're getting from our clients, any issues that we were facing. And we started seeing a lot of feedback from the clients saying that the acceptance rate of the loans that were based on our ML product, there was a problem there. The acceptance level was dropping significantly. So from there, we started tracing backwards. Okay, why is this happening? And what about the current monitoring dashboards? Why are they any showing any issues or not? From there, we figured out that the data that the monitoring data that our model, sorry, that our dashboard was capturing was not adequate. And we started moving one step downwards from there. And we continue to do this right up to the very last level, which is the last line of code and the last individual handling that code. And then we started fixing things upwards again. Okay, so nothing works in isolation. You have to pick one most critical component and then start digging downwards from there to figure out at what level, what are the issues. Once you have an understanding of all the issues, then you can prioritize and come up with something which makes sense given your business requirements. Like for us, everything was working in real time. So we could not touch anything without having a significant impact on our customers. So we had to figure out a way to make this work given the situation that was there at hand. Monitoring was critical because monitoring was a symptom that used to show us all the problems, underlying problems. So monitoring is not, it won't be 100% correct, but by looking at your monitoring and your business and triangulating from a few other sources, you can figure out if now the underlying problems are subsiding or they're still continuing to pop up. And there the experience of a person when it comes to handling machine learning or business or the head of machine learning or the modeling, those come into play because you talk to those people and then figure out, I want something done like this, now you tell me what is the best way to do it, right? And monitoring plays the most critical role there because without that you can't have any of these discussions. You won't even know there's a problem.
Right, right. Absolutely, I agree with you. Like, totally agree with you. But I guess that's my point. Like, I'm going back to the point. Like, you are you don't know about what problem our business has, and that is going to be monitored. Like that problem have going to be captured by monitoring. But I'm just talking about this use case that we know of the problem first we have besides monitoring, like model versioning. So. I have totally agree with you, but I guess you are just assuming that we don't have any, like we don't know the problem. It has some problem, but we don't know the problem of the business. And to know the problem, we have to trace back from the monitoring, right?
Uh, no, what I was trying, I mean, yeah,
Mhm.
to some extent you can say that. But my point is this is a continuous process in which monitoring plays a critical role.
Right.
Even when you know a problem and you start fixing it, let's say you start fixing the shadow IT models, or
Mhm.
you start fixing the training serving queue, how will you know that it is fixed?
Yeah,
Once you've done
yes,
something, how will you know? You have to go back to monitoring to see if it is fixed or not.
right,
How else
right,
will you know that?
right.
Yeah, that's all the only point I was making. Nothing more than that. So you just keep going deeper,
Mhm.
fix it, you come back to monitoring, you go back again, you come back to monitoring. So it keeps moving up and down.
Yeah, yeah, sure, sure. Okay, got it.
Sir, just a question. The point that shadow IT models, it is talking about the place or the API or from where the business analysts are taking the inference of our ML model, and based on that they are making the business decisions, right, sir?
Uh, yeah, I mean, not necessary. It's not clear that they are using any of our outputs as model development engineers. They
Okay.
could be actually having their own models.
Okay.
That's what the models in quotes is saying, right? They have deployed models, but the models that they've deployed are things that they have engineered by themselves, not necessarily done by us.
Okay. Okay.
So how do we want to establish monitoring? Like, what are the tools you guys can be would be using on that side?
Yeah, I think one clarification maybe that's required here. I don't think we should interpret modeling to be that narrow definition of you know tool-based monitoring that we saw in the lectures, because the tools is just one part of the problem. I think the bigger point Anupam is making is uh, monitoring as an activity needs to be rigorous, which means it's a process issue also, not just a tool issue. But yeah, coming to Sai's point now, the process, let's assume that's understood now. What would be the tools that you can use to address the problem?
I'll just give an example. If there's anyone else, please let me know, and I'll just let it be. Uh, so one of the things that we used to do is okay. Let me ask before I start. So we normally used to use Excel, etc., to figure out our confusion matrices, etc., to see if we are meeting the the required output from the model. Are you expecting certain tool names, or are you just talking about like how generally we approached it? What do you want to discuss here?
On an approach level, like what are the modules that will be affected? Given if we are going to establish a monitoring at an organization level, there will be some tricky parts, right? Like you need to communicate with the teams or upgrade your endpoint so that these KPIs needs to be integrated or these traces need to be integrated. So
Okay,
how
okay,
do you
yeah.
go
So
about
that
it?
yeah, so that's what we used to do. I'll just share my experience. So what we used to basically start off with is the entire team. The teams used to come together. So the business team, the delivery team, the modeling team, the ML team. The leads from the teams used to be together, and the business output was kept in front. And then the tracing used to start to figure out where the problems is, something which I just discussed earlier. And then once this particular thing was discussed, the issues, the likely issues were listed out, and then from that we used to figure out what are the fixes that need to happen, and then we used to create a detailed schedule and plan that these are things that you need to fix and you need to fix and so on. And so those were the uh, those were the parts that then started getting fixed and then reviewed regularly. That okay, so for example, one of the biggest issues that we used to face is that our model used to ingest a lot of data from SMSs. So the SMS formats used to keep changing regularly, or there'll be like a new bank that comes in, they'll start sending SMSs that were in a different format which could not be recognized, and that used to regularly cause our models to start failing, or not failing, drifting. So we used to have people who were continuously working on making sure that all the data formats were corrected. So then that is one thing we used to do. Once that is done, then you start rerunning your models to see if now the predictions are as expected. If that is not the case, then we look at the next thing and so on. So some of the tools that we used in that case were quite simple. I mean, we used to go with a lot of Excel based and macro based analysis. Uh, and I'm talking many years ago. At that time, lot of these other things that we used to see today are not available. So a lot of this sounds process oriented, but actually it was built around a lot of knowledge that we gained through the macros that we built in Excel to ingest the data, find out if things are not as expected, and then start making corrections to see if now things are getting fixed.
Yeah, sometimes all you need probably is just documentation, right? I think that's probably also the point that you're making, and it doesn't require any sophisticated tools per se. While of course we know some of the more sophisticated tools today, just being able to document what you have, what's the infrastructure, what's the usage, etc., is itself going to have a significant advantage.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other thoughts from others? Okay. Yeah, I think this is more like a, like I said, open-ended problem statement discussion. It's not meant to have one correct answer. So please don't take the discussion to mean that only a specific approach is valid. And again, don't assume that the same type of answers or thought process will apply in the end term. You might find variations of this problem statement in the end term, but that's more meant for, you know, in a constrained way, how would you solve a problem, etc. So hope you found this discussion useful, because it gives you a sense of how you can start applying some of the, you know, critical thought processes that you have gotten exposed to in this entire exercise.
Will there be a benchmark shared with us in terms of how you would have approached it?
Not exactly a benchmark, but I don't think, like I said, there is one clear answer per se. So if you feel that you know, you need more discussion on this question, happy to do again in the next live session. But it's more a case of, you know, uh, can you think through the approaches organically instead of, you know, blindly approaching it as a technology driven problem, because usually it's not.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Sure.